You get plenty of coverage of Oklahoma State football. You think you hear all the noise coming from Gallagher-Iba Arena when you get your Cowboy basketball news. But you don't.
You just don't get it, do you? You don't.
And there's a couple of Jordans here to fix just that. This is the Cowgirl Coverage Podcast.
This could be a podcast. Anyone with a computer can make one.
And here are your hosts, Jordan Keene and Jordan Bishop.
Welcome back in. We're back. It's the Cowgirl Coverage Podcast on the Triple Play Sports Podcast Network. We appreciate you sticking with us through the long hiatus of Cowgirl Coverage. This long hiatus of the podcast, Jordan. We've taken a few summer vacations. We've not each. I took one. You took one. We got back into it. We're getting back into it. A lot of good stuff coming. We're into women's soccer season. We're into fall softball season. We've had a lot of news in the front offices, I guess, quote-unquote front offices of some of these sports as well. So that's exciting. We'll get into all of that today, but excited to be back.
Yeah, definitely. And, like you mentioned, sports is back. So we had the exhibition for women's soccer last night. We're recording this Saturday, so it's Friday night. And then fall softball schedule is released, like you mentioned. Tennis should be soon. That schedule will be released. So it's all getting back into form. School starts on Monday, so yeah, finally the long summer vacation is over. And it wasn't as bad as you were talking about this yesterday. It wasn't as bad as we thought it was going to be, but it's nice to have sports back.
No doubt about it. Looking forward to it. Women's golf also announced their schedule. We may get to that today. Might get to that in a future episode as well. So a lot of stuff to get to here. We'll get through it. You'll hear a little bit later on some post-game comments from Coach Colin Carmichael, Charme Morgan, Jaci Jones, and just their thoughts from the exhibition last night. Good crowd out there. They posted 2,000. I don't know if there was 2,000 there, but it was definitely four figures. I mean, there was over 1,000 people there. There's no doubt about that. We sat down by the Orange Outlaws. We got the fan experience last night and kind of immersed ourselves into that because I think it's just, we work in the media, but I think it's fun to do that every now and again and just kind of, put yourself back into what the fan sees. And I think you see the game from a little different perspective and maybe it gives you a different sort of take on the game when you walk out rather than the media one where you're bouncing ideas off of each other, all of that stuff. And I just think viewing it as a fan or from a fan's perspective, because we really weren't. It's not like we were up on our feet cheering last night. It was, we were just kind of sitting with the Outlaws, kind of getting that experience, which was cool, by the way. It was a blast, and I think it maybe just gives a little bit of a different perspective. Yeah,
and that's what I've always kind of liked because, sitting in a press box, I know you get a better angle of the action, but you just feel removed from everything. You can't hear what's going on because I think one of the best things about sitting where the fan sits is getting to hear things on the field. I noticed that in softball. I noticed that in football. So you don't get as good of an angle, but you get to notice more things. And I like sitting from that angle just because, you get the whole experience, in my opinion. You had the video board so we could see on the other end, so it wasn't like it was that bad sitting on one end. So I think overall, I don't know if I'm going to be sitting in the press box for soccer anytime soon, but I'd rather sit in the stands just because I get more of a experience to see what is all going on.
I'll give you a good example of that. Softball. You mentioned softball. Last year we were in the press box all year long, and then you get to the Big 12 tournament where they had the media table set up right behind the netting, and just the interaction with the batter and the catcher and the umpire, just the umpire interacting with both teams. All of that stuff is just fascinating to get to see a little bit more up close and personal, and something that you don't generally get sitting in a press box. And don't get me wrong, the press boxes here at Oklahoma State are phenomenal, especially for the women's sports. They do a good job taking care of the media. There's no doubt about it. But I think there is something to be said for, just experiencing it in a different way and just kind of maybe pushing the reset button on it a little bit. Don't get me wrong. I'll be up in the press box and watching it from up there because, you do get a better angle and get to see some things a little bit better. But I do think that was kind of good to just – it was an exhibition game, not necessary that we need to break down every little thing that happened. We'll get into it, though, coming up a little bit later on as we move throughout the podcast here. Let's start off with the changes for a lot of these teams. Coaching-wise, there was some I keep saying front office, some administrative roles that changed hands for some of these programs as well. And then, some departures from a program that we'll get into in just a second. But let's start with women's tennis. Coach Chris Young bringing back Jaime Sanchez Canamares. That's how I'm gonna say it. Yeah. So that's how it goes until we get a pronunciation guide. He brings him back. Used to be on staff in some capacity here. He comes back, and again, it's one of those things. I don't know a ton about the tennis coaching world, so I couldn't tell you on a scale of 1 to 10 how good of a hire this is. But it's to the point in his time here at Oklahoma State that you really don't second guess Coach Young. It's one of those things where you assume that the hire is a good one, and if it's a bad one, you're shocked.
Yeah, and this is more important, I think. We talk about how in golf, for the coaches, they even said themselves they don't do that much. Tennis, assistant coach does a lot because CY can only be on at least 1 or 2 courts. Sometimes he's just on one in the corner. He's between 2. The other one's on the other side. So you have to have 2 coaches to talk to everybody going on because you have 6 courts all at once. So that's a big deal. This is a coach that he was here a couple years ago as a volunteer, I believe. They went to the Elite 8 that year. So he has experience. He's from the same college as Chris Young. So he has a lot of ties there with CY. So I think it's a pretty good hire. I don't ever doubt him, like you mentioned, with the program he's built. Every single thing he's done so far is the right move, so I think this is another right move.
Here's a quote from Chris Young talking about the new hire, Sanchez Canamares. He is a dynamic recruiter and brings knowledge and energy to the court on a daily basis, which is important as we help each player, develop and maximize their potential. That dynamic recruiter part is interesting because it's not like Chris Young's had a problem recruiting here to Stillwater. I mean, top recruiting classes year in and year out. He's been on some of, if not the best kids in each class as he continues to build his program.
Yeah, and definitely kind of get back into that whole Spanish realm because that's where they had success. In previous years, Alion Bolsova. They had Carl Termari, all from that kind of realm right there on the Mediterranean. So I think getting him back there, he has a foothold there. So that way, he's had a lot of success around the Eastern European realm. Your Slovakias, your Austrias, Ukraine. So I think if Chris can get that foothold, stay there, and then Jaime take the other part, then they have a good hold on Europe, which is pretty nice if you're Oklahoma State.
Here's the quote from the new hire talking about some of the, if not the best facilities in the country. Can't wait to get things started and feel the tremendous environment at the Greenwood Tennis Center. My family and I are extremely happy to come back home. That's something that when you read a press release with so many Oklahoma State coaches, and maybe it's fodder, maybe it's what everyone's coached up to say, but doesn't it seem like home gets mentioned a lot when they bring hires in? I mean, that's a word that Greg Robertson used. I mean, every time someone they talk about Stillwater being a home, even when it's not like traditionally their home.
Yeah, and I think we might be giving the university an advertising here, but I think it's correct that they put so much into women's sports that it does feel like home for all these people because they go somewhere else and they see that maybe it's not as valued as where they were before as here at OSU. So maybe they want to come back here because they know they're at least going to have good facilities. They're going to have good support from donors. They're going to have good support from their coaches, and they're going to have good success because that's what people do here at women's sports at Oklahoma State. So I think maybe that's what they mean when they're happy to be back home. This is where they feel that their kind of career started. This is where they feel that they are meant to be. And I don't think it's just blowing smoke. I think they're actually telling the truth.
Yeah, and good stuff there. Again, just to give you a little bit of background, he's kind of bounced around. 2017 was with CY here with the Cowgirl program, then went out to Tallahassee, Florida State, and then to Nebraska last season. So, bounced around a little bit, but back to Stillwater and maybe a little bit more stability for him, and he can kind of start to build the career from home base being here in Stillwater, and hopefully for the sake of he and the program, it works out for both sides. Again, on the surface, I'm going to assume it's going to work out until I find out otherwise coming up next season. Over on women's cross country and track, and again, you mentioned the women's team and the women's athletic department. Every single team participated in some sort of postseason outside of women's golf last year. So this is I guess women's basketball was not either. But a team, women's and really women's golf has, over the course of the past decade, has had good success in the postseason, not to the national extent, but some really good success in the postseason. And we've seen women's basketball get there too. But one that saw a national champion get crowned this year, we had her on the podcast, Sinclaire Johnson, and we'll get to her and her story, unfortunate story. Well, it's good for her. It's I'm sure the cross country and track and field teams are, feel that it's a little unfortunate, but we'll get to that in just a second. But it looks like Oklahoma State cross country and track and field has hired Stacy Stanish as the director of operations, and another administrative move. We'll get to the other one that maybe more people know about on the women's basketball side of it, but just kind of more stability to this track and field program that really, under Coach Smith, hasn't had many problems and just seems to be headed in the right direction and kind of inching their way towards what we hope to be, the first women's national championship for a team.
Yeah, definitely. And I think in this role, and we mostly talk about the director of ops doing a lot of administrative things like you mentioned, and that's what I talked to Patsy Armstrong about. We talked to Megan Robbins about, our first guest on this podcast, and They do, most of the travel, most of the, paperwork. But I think for track and field and cross country, that coaching staff is so small and it's just such a large, spectrum. You have, 40, 50 athletes. I think it's probably the biggest director of ops role out there because you got so many kids that you got to make sure that the scholarships are correct. You got to make sure that everything's going correctly, and you're on a shoestring budget. So I think that it's a very important hire. I'm reading the release yesterday. I think they got a good hire. So, overall, good for Coach Smith.
No doubt about it. Stanish, her quote, "I'm looking forward to the amount of growth I will experience not only within my position but with my staff and student athletes as well." That from the official release from Oklahoma State. So that they check off another box for Coach Smith in that program. And then the women's basketball program, Coach Littell, and we know they brought in what is seemingly one of their top recruiting classes in the past couple of years, certainly. And speaking of recruiting, they went over to the recruiting offices for football and got Patsy Armstrong, and she probably has some aspirations in sort of an administrative sort of role in her career, and it just made a lot of sense. And you got to talk to her earlier this week about the move over there and everything that goes along with that. We'll play most of that, if not all of it, at a later podcast date. But what just based on getting to chat with her, and she did a phenomenal job for Coach Gundy as the director of on-campus recruiting. What vibe did you get with her? Obviously, we know Megan Robbins was a terrific D-ops when she was in that role for the women's basketball team, but it sounds like Coach Littell got another good one.
Yeah. Patsy comes over. She was here for a year last year with football with Coach Gundy, doing a lot of recruiting, helping out to make Stillwater seem, she went and talked us through her whole, thought process. She came over from San Diego State. She had some outside the box thoughts, and she wanted to make Stillwater. She made Coach Gundy's house, a place where they could go sometimes, on recruiting trips. She wanted to make it look like a place that, is more than just people think of. Oh, it's Cowtown, Oklahoma. So she did a good job. Obviously, she brought a lot of panache to that position, and Coach Littell saw that. And so she's come over to the women's side, and she actually likes being on this side because, she has a background in basketball. She played that in high school. Her son played it until he got into football, which Anthony's going to be going to Princeton. So good for him. And he's going to his final year at Stillwater High. We talked about that a little bit, But she wants to be an AD someday. I mean, she thinks this is a good step up, obviously, as a director of ops or a program. But she's happy right where she is right now. She's not trying to move up anytime soon, but she's happy with it. She had a lot of good life advice in the hour-long conversation with her, so it was really nice to talk to her. I think that she's happy. She's traveled the world a lot, so she's happy to go to a program that just go to the Caribbean next year, and so it's pretty cool for her.
What did you find out about, what does she, obviously a lot of this goes through Coach Littell, and it's his program, and he's done a good job building this from when he took over till now, and done a really good job with he and Coach Annan and that whole staff. What has she talked about? Anything like changing, anything that she wants to kind of introduce to that program? Did you really get into any of that?
We did a little bit. She talked about the organization she has that she brought over from San Diego State, and then she used in football, of just try and keep everything. She's kind of getting introduced to this job. This is her first time as a director of operations, but she's kind of the growing pains won't be very long, because she's going to kind of pick up where Megan left off, and then she's going to try to introduce some other things in there, either with, she doesn't deal with recruits as much, obviously, but she still wants to keep in that recruiting realm, helping out the players. She worked with Courtney Bay, who's their video coordinator. She wants to get more video interactions, because she mentions, and she's true, she's right in this, that basketball, like sports like basketball, that we don't wear a helmet, or wrestling, people connect more with you. So she wants people to know the Cowgirls more than just seeing them, on a Tuesday or Sunday night. So she wants to get videos out there and stories like that.
Well, I think it is important, Jordan, because quite frankly, and I think that's kind of what we try to do a little bit with the podcast. And I don't want to say we do a great job, but that's kind of what we try to do. I mean, when we have guests on the podcast, it's not all give us the X's and O's of your position. We try to get to that human element, but I think that is important, especially for a sport like you said. Don't wear helmets. You get to see these players, and especially in women's sports where cowgirl basketball. Just about every game, player. If you buy a 200 level ticket. The 100 level, if it isn't sold out, they invite you to come down, and you're right there next to the court. And I think that's important to kind of help them feel that next level of connection. So, again, I have no doubts, just based on what Coach Gundy and what Robert Allen, who certainly, knows a lot about recruiting, and he's sung the praises of Patsy since she's been in that role of of director of on-campus recruiting for Gundy, and he's sung her praises, pretty much since she's taken that job. So, it's not something I'm concerned about. I think this is another home run hire, and I just think it makes a lot of sense for her to continue to climb the ladder a little bit, but also, really help out a program that I think is headed in the right direction in all accounts.
Yeah, definitely, and I think this is good for Coach Littell, because it's this is a bit of a transition year, and that's why the recruiting class was so big for them, and this overall, I think he has a good coaching staff with them, and then bringing in Patsy, I think just makes it pretty good as well.
All right. Hard-hitting story, the one we don't want to talk about. Friend of the podcast, one of our most recent guests, Sinclaire Johnson, national champion last year, has decided to forego her final year of eligibility and go pro. And, when we talked to her, I know she said she wanted to win a team national championship. I know she said all that stuff. But she's, at that point, she told us, she didn't know what was next for her after winning the national championship. She knew that it would probably open some more doors for her, and so she was kind of, taking the summer to figure out what was going to happen, and it turns out here near the end of the summer that she's going to forego her eligibility. Sounds like she's going to sign with an agent if she hasn't already, and kind of get the professional thing started for her. You may still see her around Stillwater. Sounds like she's going to finish out her degree, continue to train here under Coach Smith. So very similar routine probably for her still, but now she will not be eligible because it sounds like she's probably collecting a paycheck.
Yeah, and I think reading from her either her Instagram post about it, she's going to be going for the 2024 Olympics. So, this next year, I think it's obviously you already had the trials and whatnot, so I don't think she's going to be getting 2020. 2024, she's shooting for that. Might as well earn a paycheck while you're doing that, and you're kind of in the prime of your career. And, she did say that, she loved OSU and she wanted to come back here to win a national title, but, she also didn't want to, look too far in the future. She just kind of lives day by day, and, maybe this was the best decision for her. Obviously financially it is. And she is going to finish her degree, so I think that's good overall. She's going to stay around here to watch at least the regionals for cross country this year. Maybe be here next fall for nationals, but we'll see. And I just think that it's overall a good decision for her. Dave Smith's going to have to try to find somebody to fill her spot, which is pretty impossible to do for somebody who's running the second fastest time all time. But, yeah, so.
Yeah, and again, I think there's going to be people out there that say, well, you should really look, she's finishing out her degree. That's the one thing everyone says, if you leave early, well, you're mortgaging your future because you aren't finishing. She's going to finish her degree. Look, she is. And you talk, I think she's got a bright future ahead of her outside of running. And quite frankly, I don't know what the shelf life is for a runner, a middle distance runner like that is at the top of her game. 1 or 2 Olympics might be the top, and who knows what the professional things are after that, right? Like Matthew Wolf's going to go pro and he's going to play golf for the next 50 years and make money, right? He may go back and get his degree or get his degree in the off season or still take credit, and good for him if he decides to do that. But my point being, unless he suffers some sort of catastrophic injury, golf's a sport that you can play forever. I don't think you can run 1,500 meters at a world-class level for 50 years. That's not the case with that sport. So I do think it's a smart decision. I think I agree with it for her. I understand that people want to see her succeed and contribute to Oklahoma State, but I think she's still doing that, and she's already done that. She added a national championship. I know it's not a team national championship, but she added a national championship to the long storied history of this athletic department, and for that I don't think you can ever really have any complaints.
No. She brought some panache and some. That's my word today. I'm using panache a lot, but she brought that back to that program. It's kind of been a little bit down in the middle distance running for a little bit, but she brought back. She got some notoriety back to the Cowgirl track. So I think she has done a good job. And you know what? It's not like she's just going out and say, I'm going to try to find something and just do some races everyone here now. She signed with an agent who has represented Mo Farah and Usain Bolt, biggest name in track. And I think you said she maybe has a deal with Nike. So that's the biggest name in the world in clothing. So I think it's great for her. She has a future for her. So, it's overall good.
Yeah, I heard that through the grapevine. So don't ask Sinclaire Johnson and tell her that I told you. I heard it through the grapevine. But no, if that is the case, that it's huge for her, and I think she made a good choice. By the way, she only missed out on the 2020 Olympics by a fraction of a second. She was close to qualifying for Team USA for the 2020 Olympics. So this is not someone who's, it's kind of speculative. She may have success at the next. This is the equivalent, in my opinion, of a first-round draft pick in the NFL. If you're going to be a first-round draft pick, leave early. There's no reason. College football is going to offer you nothing else. Go pro, get your money, get your playing time, all of that good stuff. I think we're going to see her on the Olympic stage. And again, based on the story that I read, which seemed to be quoting her Instagram account, as you said, she said "my school" in all caps. And that was talking about Oklahoma State. She loves this place. I firmly believe that. I don't think that's just a PR move. I think she's true to that, and she is kind of the exemplify. She kind of exemplifies. I don't know if there's a one word for that. She kind of exemplifies what it means to be a cowgirl afterwards, and we're gonna find out. Who knows? Maybe she's not. Maybe she's just she'll never talk about Oklahoma State again. But I find that pretty hard to believe. She seems to love this place and love the program, love the school. So there you go. Sinclaire Johnson deciding to go pro. So before we get to soccer here, the fall softball schedule came out, and Jordan, we talked a little bit about this on the radio side of things yesterday, but a program that I'll give you the credit, man. You were on with you believed Coach Kenny Gajewski last year when preseason he said, the goal is not super regional. We want to get to the World Series. We believe this team has what it takes. I didn't necessarily believe him. You did, and you were definitely correct. But it didn't take long for me to kind of get on that bandwagon and realize there was something special cooking over there at Cowgirl Softball Stadium. 8-game fall schedule. 7 of them at home. You got that tough road trip down there at North Texas against a team that had a pretty good year last year. Now you had that near Sam Clakeley perfect game or no-hitter up here this year, but you make that return trip down here this fall. Obviously, Wichita State, Tulsa, schedule's flashed up on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. Obviously, that Tulsa game with Barfelt now on staff jumps out. But just kind of break down what this schedule is. what do you think is the main focus on what Kenny Gajewski's trying to get accomplished here in the fall schedule?
Yeah, I think anytime you're doing a fall schedule or a spring schedule of your soccer, you're looking for regional opponents that that way you don't have to pay as much. It's cheaper, but regional opponents that people know and that you're probably gonna play in the regular season. Oklahoma State plays Tulsa pretty much in every sport now, either exhibition or the regular season. So it's always good to get them on the schedule. Wichita State has been a staple of the Cowgirl softball schedule for years now. North Texas has been on for the past couple of seasons. So I think it's good that you got those 3 Division I opponents that you're probably going to play here in the spring as well. They're going to be – I know Wichita State had a down year last year, but they should be on the up and up. Tulsa's going to be under a new coach now that Coach Barkfeld's here. In North Texas, Coach Gajewski talked a lot about them. They had, I think, their coach was his fifth or first or second year there, and I think they had like the program record for wins last year in that short time. So they're on the up and up. So I think that's good to play them. And like I mentioned that, this isn't the NFL preseason. It's not like Logan Simonek and Callie Omier, they're all going to sit out and just not play. And they're going to play. This is a time for your younger players, your freshmen, sophomores, to get some time in there, or somebody like a Gabby Sprang who didn't play very much last year after coming as a transfer. She's gonna be a junior. Some people like that, some unproven, is to actually get some time out there and to see if they can prove themselves.
Now, yesterday I asked you, and again, put you on the spot, didn't really prep you for it. I asked you. You mentioned Michaela Richburg breaking out last fall. Who's someone maybe you'd be looking at to break out this fall? And you mentioned, out in the outfield, Maddie Lohman, that maybe looking for her. And obviously outfield depth is something that is going to be crucial. It was crucial last year, and that's part of what helped you be a successful program last year. You've had kind of 24 hours since I asked you that question. Maddie Lohman aside, is there anyone else that kind of jumps out at you?
Well, you can talk about Gabby Sprang. See if she gets that control, under control, because that's something that's been a problem. And then Coach Gajewski talked about that. Kelly Maxwell, we haven't seen her pitch at all. She was highly touted coming in. She redshirted last year, so to see how she does. But other than that, see how things go at first base, because Maddie Lohman, she might be fighting for a spot in the outfield, but you already have Chelsea Alexander. You already have Cheyenne Factor. That right field position is in flux because of what happens at first base. Either Michelle Richburg's going to play there, or she's going to play at first on what happens there. So,
yeah, just kind of interesting. Gabby Sprang, if she's able to become a dynamic closer, obviously this is kind of depends on if Simonek can get it going starting, because we know she sometimes has some struggles starting games. She's a little bit better out of the bullpen. But either way, with Sprang, she's such a dynamic left-handed pitcher that I think if she can focus in on the control and kind of hone that in, I think the sky is the limit for her. Like, I don't know if she has much of a ceiling. Like, I think she can be among the best pitchers. Like, she has all the assets that you need to be one of the top pitchers in the country, and that's why I think she was ranked as such when she was coming out of high school.
Yeah, she's 6'1". She's a lefty. She's got a long reach. So she has a lot of power coming out of the circle. Some long legs to get good drive off. So, she has all the physical attributes of being a good pitcher, dynamic pitcher. I'd like to see what she has in terms of her repertoire. But overall, she just has to get the control, because we saw a little bit last year. She have a wild pitch over here now and then. She has trouble finding the zone a little bit. So, I think that's her biggest problem. And maybe she has that honed in. Having Coach Barkfeld, definitely on staff, who's had so many good pitchers at Tulsa, definitely helps her. So to see how she does in this fall schedule, maybe it's a good premonition for the next spring.
There's no doubt about it. And I think Barkfeld, when he comes over here, he's going to be like licking his chops. At all of the talent he has on that pitching staff. You talk about Sprang, who hasn't hit her stride yet. She hasn't hit by anywhere near her capabilities, I don't think. Maxwell, as you mentioned, coming off a redshirt, a couple top 100 recruits coming in at the pitching position. Got Sprang, got Simonek. You got the transfer Eberly from Virginia Tech. I think he's going to look at that and say, man, I think this is a staff I can do something with. And if so, I think this could be really another dangerous year coming up in the spring. But obviously, fall schedule, just going from late September to late October, just a month, hit it and get it, 8 games, and you roll right through it. So I'm excited to probably catch a couple of those games and just see what it looks like in the fall, because obviously that's a big building block, much like the spring is for the soccer you mentioned. This is a building block on how you start to get some momentum heading towards the spring season, and you find out some key things for the spring season as well, as you mentioned last year with Richburg and players like that. All right, Jordan, the marquee story right now, the marquee sport going on right now is soccer. I'm stoked about it. I've made no bones about my excitement that it's soccer season. And last night we had the Cowgirls take on the Tulsa Golden Hurricane, and a team that they beat 1-0 in the spring season, and also in an exhibition. Exhibition game here, their only exhibition for both teams. Both teams will start regular season play coming up. I believe Tulsa waits till the weekend. Oklahoma State goes down to Lamar on Thursday already to get their season going. But again, a 2-2 draw. Oklahoma State had the lead. Tulsa tied it. Tulsa took the lead, and then Oklahoma State tied it. We'll get into kind of the specifics of it, but just your original takeaway, just kind of a couple of key points that maybe something that shocked you positively, negative, however you want to go with this. Just kind of a couple key points that caught your eye yesterday.
Well, number one, Coach Carmichael talked a lot about Gabriella Coleman playing in the spring. I didn't get to see her play in the spring. Coming over from Mississippi State, though, and how impressed he was with her, and she was impressive last night. And a night where I thought maybe Jaci Jones was a little bit off. There were some passes that I think were right on line to her, and she just couldn't get to. Gabriella Coleman kind of picked the slack, and so I think that's what you need there in that forward position. Charme Morgan played all 90 minutes. She didn't look like she had the tape on her leg, but didn't look like the ACL tear from last year affected her at all. She was one of the right spots last night, and it wasn't like it was a bad outing. You heard Coach Carmichael here in a little bit say they were a little flat though, so it's kind of seemed like that 2-2 draw. I mean, it's not a loss, but it's not a win either. And I know it was an exhibition game, but I think that's what stuck out to me was Gabriella Coleman, Charme Morgan's play. Jaci Jones seemed a little bit not herself. And then we get to see Kim Rodriguez. I think that back line looked solid. A lot of times there's some lapses, including that first goal for Tulsa. So I think you got to shore that up a little bit on that back line. But other than that, I think you got some good pieces to build on.
Yeah, I was really impressed with a lot of different things. Number one, Charme Morgan was phenomenal last night. And if you told me she had an ACL last year, I would have said, seriously? I mean, she never stopped. I mean, and that's Charme Morgan. She does not stop. The starting 11 was Allie Jackson, along with Elise Hahn and Kim Rodriguez in the defense. Your wingbacks last night, starting off, were Charme Morgan and losing her. I just lost her. I had her. Claire Ganser. And then the midfield was Cammie Huddleston, which I thought was a little interesting that she was in. I wonder if she'll be a starter come regular season. I'll kind of give my theory on that. But she was in the midfield along with Grace Yoakum and Julia Lenhart, and then the forwards were Gabriella Coleman and Jaci Jones. Coleman was good. I thought she missed a few chances that I thought she might put away, but I think a lot of that just goes down to it's early in the season, and not a lot of teams are very good in front of the net. That's what was shocking about and perhaps worrying, but the fact that you only gave Tulsa 3 good chances, and they scored on 2 of them. I mean, the first goal, I thought Elise Hahn was that's not something she made. That's not a mistake she makes. Yeah. And so that was disappointing to me. I would agree with you, though. I thought Jaci Jones was just a little off last night. First touch wasn't quite there for her. So, I'm not concerned necessarily about it. I was a little disappointed, I guess. But again, I understand that this is the preseason. It's early on, and I understand all of that stuff. I think you can tell Kim Rodriguez has been playing competitive matches for the last month with Mexico. Like, she looked sharp. Her first touch was there. Obviously, she had a chance with about 2 minutes left to win it, and kind of mishit the ball when she was going for the shot. So it was not a perfect game by any means. You didn't win, so that that tells you. But I thought, although it wasn't a perfect game, I thought it was a perfect preseason game. Like first half was underwhelming. You got better in the second half, created a lot of chances in the second half. I didn't think Jaci Jones I didn't think that was a penalty that the ref gave to her. I saw the replay.
There's a makeup for the one on Kim.
But yes, I will say that he missed a stone cold penalty when Kim got tripped. So what goes around comes around. That's karma. That's how that works. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't meant to be either. I don't think.
Yeah, and I think one thing I kind of didn't get a gauge of last night was a goalkeeper, because the first half, Cowgirls controlled possession a lot. There wasn't much action for Hannah Warner. I don't think she had any shots on goal, or Tulsa had in that first half. And then she gets pulled with about 5 minutes left. Danny Greenlee comes in, plays the rest of the game. Danny does give up those 2 in the second half. The first one, I think, is more of a mistake on the defenders. You still got to try to save that. The second one was just out of her reach. I mean, there's no way she was getting to that. So I don't know how you can gauge that. I don't know how Colin's gauging it. I feel bad for him because he wants to have, he said it many times, in an ideal world you have a starter or backup, but he just doesn't have that right now. He hopes he has it by the end of the year, but who knows?
Unless he was looking for something communication-wise from the goalkeepers, I learned nothing last night. I mean, the 2 goals were – the one was a wonder strike. She was never going to save it. And the second one, you can't be expected to save that when your defense breaks down the way it did. So, I agree with you. You didn't learn anything last night from the goalkeepers, and I don't. That's not their fault, quite frankly. I thought the midfield and the defense played well enough to the point where Tulsa just didn't get that many chances. I mean, 3 shots on goal, and 2 of them turn into goals. That's a conversion rate that'll win you most games. I'll tell you that much. So, obviously Tulsa was rotating a ton. Oklahoma State only played 4 players off the bench, and really only 2 players, or really 1 player. Siragusa came in, and by the way, I think Siragusa will move her way probably at some point. Maybe she stays as a bench player. I think she has the quality to start, and as we move forward here, I just wonder if she comes in and Cammie Huddleston leaves, does not start, comes off the bench, and if Siragusa comes in and slots in as a defending option. I really liked the midfield of Yoakum, Lenhart, and Kim Rodriguez last night. I thought that was a great setup in the midfield. Another option that I think we might see at some point is we didn't see Olivia Dow last night, and I just wonder if she picked up an injury. Colin mentioned that yesterday with Robert, that there was a couple starters that probably would not get many minutes, if at all, just simply because they picked up some injuries in training. They could have gone if it was a competitive match, but seeing as it was just a friendly, you don't risk anyone further injury. I wonder, because we've heard a lot about her. I mean, back in the spring when we had Coach Colin on the podcast, he talked about her. So from spring till now, I can only believe that Dow got better, and I gotta believe that she has a role to play. And if she comes in as a striker, I wonder if that moves Jaci back to the midfield, and then what that does to Cammie Huddleston, because she was someone last night that I did not expect to see in the starting 11. She ends up there. I didn't think she had a bad game, but I thought she just looked a tick slower than the rest of them in the midfield.
Yeah, and I could mention about Kim going to the midfield. She can pretty much play anywhere, it feels like, on that field. So I think you can kind of do with her what you want. If you're Coach Colin Carmichael, where you want to move her up, I think that slots in nice. Allie Jackson looked nice to me last night. So I think she slotted in as a defender for the rest of the year, unless anything happens. I mean, I'm kind of gauging her thing off an exhibition, but she looked good last night. So going into Lamar on Thursday, kind of what's your biggest, what do you think they should improve on to get a win? I think obviously defense look nice. You want to shore that up a little bit, but I think the biggest thing all off season is just goal scoring. So what do you think is the biggest thing they need to work on for that game?
I mean, goal scoring is going to be the one that they point out, but quite frankly, I don't think it's something that is dire. It's not a problem at this point in time. Colin Colin's talked about coming into camp. You start with defense, you start with shape, you figure that out, you come out, you play an exhibition, you like the way you looked for large parts of that game. Now you go back to the training ground and you figure out how you're going to attack. And once I think you figure that out, I think you're going to have a lot of chances. Again, the versatility of a lot of players. Kim Rodriguez can play defender or midfielder. Allie Jackson can play defender or midfielder. Siragusa can play defender or midfielder. You have a ton of different. Jaci Jones can play forward. Yoakum can play forward. All of just the versatility with a lot of these players. If you're losing 1-0 going into the last 20 minutes of the match, he can flip the switch and put in a different formation and really give himself a lot of attacking prowess on the field. And I think he's just having that versatility gives me some more comfort that, this team's never going to be out of it. I think they're too good defensively. Again, the 2 goals one of them was really fluky. A deflection landed at a girl's feet, and she hit a great shot. I mean, you're going to have those happen, and you just hope it doesn't cost you a game when those happen. But outside of that, the defense I thought was phenomenal last night. Outside of 2 seconds of Elise Hahn just not paying attention. Yeah. That's all it was. It was, and by the way, that's soccer. I mean, you have to play and you have to be mentally engaged for 90 minutes. You can't play like she had 89 minutes and 50 seconds of really, really good soccer. And that 10 seconds that she just lapsed off, it allowed Tulsa to score a goal. So that's the way it goes. What am I looking for? I guess I'm looking for a little bit more stability in the midfield. I thought they could have been better. I thought the first touches of Jaci and Claire Ganser and Cammie Huddleston were just off, and that's going to happen. And Julia Lenhart too. She didn't have probably her top game either, but I think that's to be a little bit expected. It's the first game of the season.
Yeah, I tell you what, the most impressive thing I saw last night, and it was a good that you mentioned earlier. Packed crowd. It was a nice, actually they had the parking lot open by the stadium for the first time. There's traffic afterwards. That's nice to see after a soccer match, especially an exhibition. But yeah, other than most of the student section was filled with the Outlaws. Kind of the size of the main stadium, there were some spots, but the main center of the stadium was full. So that was nice to see. The first goal, everybody been waiting. The first half was scoreless, and the first goal we get 3 minutes into that second half, it was so nice. Cammie Huddleston passes it over. Looks like Jaci Jones is going to take it. She pump fakes. She doesn't actually. She kind of just.
She dummies it, yeah.
She dummies it, and then Gabriella gets it. Tries to get the goal. Gets the deflection off. Gets it again. Gets it in, and it was just the crowd erupted. It was nice to see on. That's probably a terrible way to do play-by-play. That's why I don't do play-by-play. That's what Jordan does. But I really liked seeing that. The crowd erupted. It was a nice start. The fans were into it. The players were into it. So that's pretty cool to see.
Yeah, I want to bring that up. You mentioned the goal there, and by the way, she scored. She gets that goal in the 49th minute, just into the second half, before Tulsa get their 2 goals. And by the way, you'll hear the sound from this coming up here, the post-match sound. I want to talk about that really quickly though, because Colin talked about not doing much offensive training yet. They haven't done much attacking training yet in practice in camp. That is what gives me comfort for this offense, because when Cammie squares that ball, it's very easy for Jaci Jones to just one time hit it and have it hit at goal. And really, you wouldn't say, it's okay, you're shooting from 15, 16 yards. It's probably 9 times out of 10 a pretty good shot. Yeah. But the composure and the unselfishness of her to step over that, dummy it, and let it roll to Grace Yoakum. And then Yoakum was open. She could have very well ripped that shot right then. But for the composure for her to see, okay, I have someone 5 yards away from me. There's no one within a mile of Gabriella Coleman. I'm going to slot the ball over to her. She's onside, and then she gets it done from there. I just thought from that perspective, both Jaci Jones and Grace Yoakum, who neither one of them would have told you they had their best night last night, but both of those two have the quality and the mental fortitude. I mean, they think through the game so much better than I think a lot of soccer players do. So that's what gives me a lot of hope offensively, because they didn't work on that. That's not something they've been working on. That's not, so for them to, and I know those two are experienced, and we shouldn't be shocked that it comes from them, but still, it's the first game of the season. It's the first crack at competitive action. I mean, you wouldn't necessarily blame them for being a little selfish and wanting to get the first goal, right? So the composure and the unselfishness, just staying calm in those situations, I think should give fans a lot of positive vibes going into the season.
Yeah, definitely. That's something that I hadn't thought of. They haven't worked on that before. They've been working on defense and conditioning, like Coach has said. So, that's something promising when they do actually start working on offensive things that they can build on. Because it was a really nice play to see. So, if they have more plays like that, this could be a team that get back into the postseason, maybe make some noise. So it's exciting. Soccer's back. It's exciting to actually have something to talk about other than just recruiting for once. So it's nice to see actual games starting again. So hopefully Thursday we'll see a win.
No doubt about it. Coach Colin Carmichael's post-game thoughts yesterday. Here they are.
First reaction, I thought first half we're a little bit flat, a little bit out of sync. Some of our passing wasn't so crisp, some of our movement, but to be expected. It's the first time we've played a real game in a long, long time. I think Tulsa would probably say the same thing. So first half I wasn't too happy, but it was tight. And then second half I thought we brought a lot of energy, created a ton of good looks at goal. I thought we were a better team. They hit us a couple of times with good counter-attacks and scored a couple of nice goals. But I thought the second half, our movement was better, our passing was better, just our energy overall was better. And again, that's probably to be expected. Had to get rid of some of the rust first of all from being off for so long.
There you go. That was Coach Colin Carmichael talking a little bit flat on the offensive side, but that's a little bit to be expected. Not the sharpest they've ever looked. Like I said, I think if you asked Lenhart, Yoakum, Huddleston, and Jaci Jones, they would have all said, yeah, no, our first touches weren't quite there tonight. And I think that's a little bit to be expected at this point in the season. Charme Morgan, they asked Charme Morgan yesterday after the match, some of the mistakes on the offensive end, and she pointed out that, there's going to be mistakes at this point in the season, but they really haven't worked on that a whole lot. Here's Charme Morgan.
For sure, most definitely, and that's why, we have these exhibition matches just to, see where everyone else is, and the good thing is that, everything's fixable, and, we've got time, and all it takes, we just need some repetition, some communication, just fix little things, and, like as Colin said, we're going to mess up, and that's okay, and it's all fixable, so we're just going to go back to the drawing board and just, fix those things.
There you go. That's Charme Morgan. And one last bit of sound. The last person got to talk to last night was Jaci Jones. And, again, she talked a little bit about what everyone's been asking about all season. A little bit about the offense, but this team's built on defense. And defense wins championships, Jordan.
Yeah, that's what she said. The way she made it sound was like calling and come up with the quote. It just cracked me up. But anyway, defense does win championships. That's the old saying. But and like we talked about on the radio yesterday, most people could use it as a cop out. Like that just means you can't score, and that's why everybody says defense wins championships because you can't score. But I don't think that's the case here. I think you have some nice pieces up front. Jaci just didn't have her best game last night, but G looked really good. So and maybe you can move some people around. You have a really good midfield, a really good defensive back line. So I think that is the strength of this team. So it's easier for me to find a couple people up front to score for you than instead of trying to find 5 people to fill that front or that mid and back there, because I think they have those pieces. They just got to find the other pieces.
No doubt about it. Here's Jaci Jones post-match last night against Tulsa.
First day preseason, coach said defense wins championships, so we really want to focus on that, and if we can't defend, then we're going to get scored on constantly. And they also give us a lot of freedom in the final third and up front and up top, so we just need to be more creative, I think, and create chances. We created plenty of chances. I probably should have had 5 goals tonight if I'm being realistic. So I don't think it's really an issue, and that I think offensive just comes with playing with each other and kind of knowing what each other wants and who wants the ball at feet, who wants the ball in behind, and the defensive side of things, you really have to focus on that and get that under control, because if you don't have defense, then they're just going to run right through you. So
there you go. That was Jaci Jones and Jordan. As you mentioned, we got it coming up this weekend. You got Tulsa, Tulsa goes their own way. We don't care about Tulsa anymore. We got the Cowgirls heading down to Lamar. They take on Lamar, and then also in Beaumont taking on UTSA as well. So that opens up the season. Then they head to Norman. They go to Norman for the the Phillips 66 Bedlam matchup now. So they head down there for that as well. So a couple road games between now and their next time at home. But still going to have a chance here with some good teams and a good non-conference slate that we'll get to throughout the preseason here. But again, not perfect, but I thought it was a pretty good showing here for the first time for Coach Colin Carmichael's crew.
Yeah, definitely, and I'm excited. I might try to see if I can pull Bill on the radio for Thursday's match, just to hear what's going on there. Because I wish it was on TV, but I think the OU match or one of those matches is going to be on TV. It might be the OU match down in Norman that we can watch, so that'd be nice. They have a nice facility down there. I remember going. That was where they had the media room for Big 12 tennis a few years ago, so they have a nice facility down there. But it's not as nice as Patterson Stadium, as we saw last night, because that thing is really nice.
No doubt about it. Best facility. I mean, my goodness, the women's facilities here. I can't wait for cross country to get done, because you might be talking about 3 of the top facilities in their sports. When you talk about Neil Patterson, Greenwood Tennis Center, and what we might get with the once everything's done with the cross country meet, whatever you call that course. There you go. Jordan, appreciate it, man. That's episode 28 in the books.
Yeah, definitely. Got back on. Hopefully we should. I'll ask Wade if we can get somebody on. We'll at least have sound next week. I can try to go out every week. Go for availability. I think they're on Wednesdays usually, so we'll try to do that. And, hopefully we'll have a guest on next week.
No doubt about it. And they're in the evening, so I can get to them too. So that's going to be exciting as well. Looking forward to the season. Looking forward to getting back on the Cowgirl Coverage podcast train, man. It's exciting stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And we have Patsy Armstrong. It'll be somewhere down the line, but I was really good to talk with her, so we'll have that. So look forward to that.
Fun stuff. A lot happening. A lot happened this summer that we didn't get to. We'll try to just kind of chip away at it throughout the coming weeks here. But a lot of changes over there at Gallagher Iowa Arena, Neil Patterson Stadium, Cowgirl Stadium, Greenwood Tennis Center. A lot of stuff. And there's always exciting things coming out of there, especially with the talented, dominant women's athletic department that Oklahoma State has. We'll see you next time. This has been the 28th edition of the Cowgirl Coverage podcast on the Triple Play Podcast Network.